If you're looking for a perfect everyday bag that is light, durable, versatile, and hip for this summer, don't miss out on the newest addition to the Knack family of products, the Knack Sling Bag. It looks and feels great, whether at work or at the beach on a hot summer day.
Check out the link in the description to order yours with free shipping on all orders. Thanks to our friends at Knack for sponsoring this episode. If you get a Knack bag, don't forget to post it on social media and tag us at GameOnETB. We want to see you enjoying your Knack bag.
This is Game On, discussing the biggest games and all the latest sports news with Johnny Montalbano and Hank Indictor on the Empty the Bench Podcast Network.
It's showtime, folks. It's episode 14 of Game On the Empty the Bench Podcast Network, presented by Knack. Johnny Montalbano, Hank Indictor with you here on another busy show. Hank, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing okay. Still trying to recover from my experience in Tampa, seeing the Rangers getting eliminated. But you know what? It is what it is. I have a lot to be proud of with the squad, as I will be getting into later. But in any event, Johnny, how about yourself? How are you doing, buddy?
I'm doing okay. It's kind of, I'll be honest with you, as we start the show here, I didn't bring this up with you guys before we started, but as we record the show, today's a bit of a mixed emotion day for me because it was 5 years ago to the day that we're recording the show that my dad passed away. So, mixed emotions in that regard. But you know what? He'd be proud that I'm doing this show. He'd be proud about the Rangers in the way that they had their season. So, you know what? We will honor and remember him throughout. And, we'll do a show because that's what we do here. Otherwise, I'm good, in the middle of my vacation with my main job. So I'm enjoying that. I'm enjoying not getting up at 3 o'clock in the morning for a full week. But I'm also glad to be here because the show goes on. And I have to say also that is a clean-shaven Hank Indictor over there, folks. I don't know if you would have realized that, but that's what's going on here. But we have a lot to get to, as we usually do here on the show. And, of course, folks, there's plenty of ways for you to get aboard. You can follow us on our social media platforms. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/GameOnETB, on Twitter at GameOnETB, and also our Instagram account, GameOn_ETB. And, of course, our personal handles are on that bottom line right there. So, Hank, as you said, a lot to get to with the Rangers, which we'll get to in just a second here. We got the NBA Finals, which have been really crazy when you look at it. The Warriors up 3-2, looking to close it out on Thursday, if not possibly going to a Game 7. We'll get into that. There's also a wild story in the world of golf. Obviously, if you've been paying attention, this LIV tour, this LIV tour has just exploded in the news the last few days. And so we'll get into all of that. But we got to get it going here, Hank. Obviously, a little season ender for the Rangers here. And, we spoke about it last week, how, they were up 2-0. And, we're looking at the time and up 2-0 in Game 3. And it looked like they were on their way to maybe, putting the hammer on the Lightning. But Tampa Bay storms back late in Game 3 to tie it up and win it late, and they take off from there. So a bit of a disappointing end in that regard, but they're now going to their third straight Stanley Cup Final, which is amazing when you look at, sports in general. You rarely see teams repeat, let alone going for 3 in a row. And so we'll get into the Stanley Cup Final in just a moment, but just to look back at the series and to look back at the Rangers season as a whole. Look, I'll be honest with you. Let me go here first in this regard, and I'll get to you because you went to the game in Tampa in Game 6. So we'll get all of that in. But as far as the Rangers, here you go for me. Obviously, very successful season. Disappointing the way it ended because you look at Game 3 and they were up 2-0 and up 2-0 in the series as well, and you had a chance to put it away. Tampa comes back. You knew they weren't going to go away quietly. They come back to tie it up. And then that 4-minute power play, which I know we spoke about before, I said at the time, and I stay with it, that 4-minute power play was a series-altering moment. And it had the potential to be that. It turned out it was that. And then, it's been, the story of the Rangers. They weren't really able to win on the road. when they don't get production from their top players, they don't win. And that's what really it came down to towards the end there. Tampa gets a game at the Garden and then goes down and wins it. And injuries did start to pile up for the Rangers late there, with Ryan Strome, with Philip Hedl. And I think that the exhaustion factor may have also played a part in this as well. So, yeah, it was a tough way to lose. I know, obviously, the other big story with the Rangers is the Capo Caco scratch in Game 6, but yeah, I mean, you look at just because of the way it happened that they were up 2-0 and also had a chance to put it away in Game 3. It is a bummer, but there's really nothing else to be disappointed about because this was such a successful year. I didn't think that. I mean, I thought they were maybe a playoff team, but I mean, you saw a lot of great things with them. So yeah, it's a bummer, but I'm sitting here in the middle of June and I'm very happy with what the Rangers did this season.
So let me reiterate what I had a feeling the Rangers were going to do before the season. Now, if you had talked to me, had we met before the season, I would have told you with 100% confidence that the Rangers were definitely going to go to the playoffs. And why is that? Because if you look at what happened last year and you look at what happened this year with the team, there was no way they could have had the bad luck that they had last year and this year. And I had a feeling maybe they'd win at least a playoff series, but if you had told me third round, that's where I would have told you that it would be a stretch. So with that being said, yes, I completely agree with you. I am 100% proud of what this team did. I know they couldn't end up finishing the job and winning the Stanley Cup, but hopefully that'll happen. Let me knock on wood at least once within the next few years. And I think it's definitely a very real possibility. And look, I'm not going to lie though, in the heat of the moment and after that loss, it's hard to really look at all the things that were positive at first. But without further ado, I want to share with you my takeaways, not so much from this series, but from the season as a whole. Number one, one of the big things that was talked about during the series was the Igor's better chance at the Garden. And while, don't get me wrong, I'm not the biggest fan of those chants, I don't really think that those were necessarily a jinx. I think that's Ranger fans being Ranger fans. And if you want my opinion on certain chants at the Gardens, there are ones that I really can't stand. Cough, cough, Potvin sucks. That chant should have died a long time ago. But yeah, no, in any event, I don't think that was a jinx. I thought both goalies played pretty much as well as advertised. And I think that was really the highlight of that series. If we were talking about this from a pure non-biased standpoint. Number two, I think as far as the Capo scratch goes, I'll be honest with you, I didn't like that. And as far as the ramifications in the long term of what happens with him via free agency, I don't know how that's going to turn out. Time will tell. But I think the media and the fan base on Twitter, especially the younger ones who really love Capo, were making this a bigger situation than it actually was. And if we base it on the press conferences, Capo said it himself. He said that scratching wasn't going to affect what he does in the offseason. And Gallant himself went out of his way to not only praise Lafreniere, but Capo as well. And he says he expects them to be on the top scoring line. So, yeah, of course. And if you really look at it historically, a lot of coaches don't really play the younger guys on the top line and give them as much minutes earlier in their career. So I really think that argument is a wash. I think Capo will be fine. And again, I'm also not really a fly on the wall, so I really don't know what Gallant would have been thinking. And also, not to mention, I think Gallant even took ownership of the fact that he probably shouldn't have played Strome in that last game when it was clear that he was playing hurt. So there's that. And speaking of Gerard Gallant, I really don't get the criticism at all because, look, say what you want about the guy. He accomplished more in one season than most coaches in Rangers history. Let that sink in.
Yeah.
And number four. Sorry. What were
That's
you
okay.
Number four, speaking of Ryan Strome, I can't help but feel bad for the guy. I mean, look, you said that the series altering moment was the whole blown 4-minute power play, and I completely agree with that. But I think another one possibly would be Strome missing that goal with a wide open net. That's definitely come back to hurt. But at the same time, when you really look at it, fair or not, he's unfortunately going to be looked at as a scapegoat. And it's a real shame because if we really look at that game, I don't think that was really the main reason they lost. When you have Ryan Lindgren as your only goal scorer in that game, then that's a problem. And also when you live and die by your power play, and when you're 5-on-5 can't really get enough scoring opportunities, that's another thing that can be a problem. So I think Strome, I feel bad for the guy, but you know what? I respect the hell out of him because he played with a lot of heart. He tried his best, even with injuries, but unfortunately he had that moment. And sadly, I don't know if he's going to be back next year, but I'll get into the offseason moves a bit later. And as far as blowing the 2-0 lead goes, listen, as much as we can point fingers at whoever didn't perform, as much as we can shame the Rangers for blowing a 2-0 lead, I don't necessarily think the Rangers choked the series. I think they just essentially ran out of gas. And you also have to give Tampa credit where credit is due. Their stars came up big, just like they've done in years past. And that's why we're having this sad discussion. And that's why we're having this we even have the possibility that they can three-peat. And then last but not least, this was a special season. And as I said, in the heat of the moment, it doesn't look like it looks like a failed season because of the way it ended. But I think this is really going to be the start of what will probably lead to something bigger later on. And not to mention, I would say this is probably one of my favorite Ranger seasons of all time because, look, they weren't expected to go further than maybe the first round, had a lot of crazy moments during the regular season. They finished one win short of the single season franchise record. They were fighting for the division at the end of the season. And not to mention, they put a scare into the Lightning. If that doesn't say anything about how great the season was, I don't know what it does. And for me personally, going to the games I did, it's funny, up until the season, I had my own list of top 5 moments, but now if I update that list of top 5 or 10 moments I saw at MSG, I think half of them would probably be from this year alone, especially the playoffs. And I had a lot of fun going to every single home playoff game at MSG. The place was absolutely rocking. And one last time, for old time's sake, let me break out my towel.
Yeah, always. Keep that going. That was great. Yeah, Hank, I've been watching the Rangers since I was 4. In fact, the first year I watched them was the 94 final, and we are actually on the 28th year anniversary of the 94 final. So, yeah, this was actually, to me, this was a top 3 team in my lifetime with the Rangers. Obviously, the 94 team was great. 97 was great. The last time I felt this great about the Rangers was the year they made the Cup Final, and I was more bummed about that year when they lost to the Kings because the Rangers were a 1 seed, the Kings were an 8 seed, and there's also the way that they lost that series with the double overtime goal was a bummer. But as far as, surprises and success, I have to go back to the first year out of the lockout in 04 and 05 when I was starting to actually go to games partially because that team – really, you look at it, from what they were before that lockout to what they were coming out of it were so different. And they actually, exceeded expectation and began, while I wouldn't say it was a dynasty, I would say probably one of the more consistent runs in their franchise history and really in the entire league. They made the playoffs pretty much every year for a long period of time outside of 1 year when they missed it in the last day of the season. So maybe this is the start of another long run for them. So I do agree with you on that. And you also brought up a great point too. There's a couple of things to this series. I agree with you. I don't think the Rangers choke this series away. I mean, we always talk about it. You don't panic or you don't go crazy until you lose a game at home. The Rangers did what they needed to do in the first 2 games. You almost could pinpoint also, besides that series altering moment that I keep bringing up, the last 5 minutes of game 2, because that's when it looked like the Lightning were actually really starting to find their stride. And we had talked about the rust factor too as possibly being something. So you look at that. There's also the fact the Rangers really on the power play were great, but they were not really that great 5-on-5 on even strength. And I think you also have to give Tampa a lot of credit there because, Stamkos was great. Kucherov, they brought in some other guys. I mean, they were also doing this without a very valuable player in Braden Point. And it speaks also to the core that the Lightning have had for this run And that's how teams really repeat, is with the core group of guys. And Vasilevsky played great. I think him and Igor both played fantastic. So you can't say that Igor really had a letdown. I just think that, Tampa, when you look at it, was just the better team when it came down to it. And, in the end, the last few games, Tampa's big players produced. The Rangers players didn't. It was almost like the beginning of the Carolina series when the top lines for the Rangers did absolutely nothing in the first couple of games. And then they came up late. And then down the stretch here, they just couldn't get it done. So, yeah, it's still one of the best years in my lifetime of watching them. And so now you wonder, the key's going to be now the expectation is going to be they have to come back to this point next season. And, now they got a list of free agents that they got to decide what they're going to do on. But at the end of the day, I mean, Chris Drury putting this team together the way he did, the moves that he made at the deadline, getting Vetrano in here for Florida was fantastic. I mean, he was such a great addition for depth, and he provided a good amount of scoring in that short period of time that he brought over. So all the moves really panned out, and now, we'll find
Copper
out.
Too.
I'm sorry?
Copper too.
Cop was great. Yep, absolutely. They really hit the home run on all this. Chris Kreider.
I also thought Tyler Mott was kind of an unsung hero too, by the way.
Absolutely. I mean, almost can go through this whole entire team. That's how special it really was. But look, this Lightning team, I mean, there's a reason why they are 2-time defending champions, and they're going for a third straight one. As somebody who didn't think they would get past the Carolina series, I'm very happy sitting here in the middle of June, looking back at this season, and I'm excited to get to the fall, because if a good chunk of these players are going to be here on this team next season, and that's how you can keep it going, you're going to obviously have to replace some guys. Now, they do have some, free agent questions they got to decide. Strome, Vetrano, Tyler Mott, Rooney, Braun, Andrew Kopp, all unrestricted free agents. And then on the restricted side, among the guys, it's Georgiev and Capocacco. So that's where your focus is going to be. But Hank, also as a diehard Ranger fan, what's one area that you would look at? I know you don't want to get into the offseason right away here, but what's one area you would look at for the Rangers here in the offseason going into next season that you would want to address?
I would definitely say forward depth, and maybe see what you can do about the centers, because, as I said, the 5-on-5, if you looked at the Rangers all year, it wasn't just this series. Like, there was a good amount of time during the season where the 5-on-5 was an issue, and you can ask Brian Attard, but we had this conversation too, whether it be on Blue Truth or whether it be messaging on the side or the few times that I ran into him at MSG. Like, you could ask him, he will tell you that the 5-on-5 was something that was probably going to come back to haunt them, because in the playoffs, like, the officiating and power plays, like the way they give them out, are like totally different than the regular season. And I think you definitely need to have like the forward depth like be fixed, so that way you don't have to worry about such a situation in the playoffs next year for sure. But let me go over before I turn it over to you, and before we move on to the next subject, let me go over the unrestricted free agents, if I may. So I think the first one of the first guys that I think really you need to re-sign is Tyler Mott. This is a guy who I thought he was the unsung hero, and probably one of Drury's more important acquisitions during the deadline. He's a really good and tangible fourth liner. He kills penalties. You need those depth players for future cup runs. Diamond in the rough, I think you could get him for a relatively reasonable contract. He may be asking for a raise, but I don't think signing him should be impossible. So I think that's one guy. Between Andrew Kopp and Ryan Strome, this is going to hurt me to say, because I like both of these guys, but ultimately, as much as I appreciate what Strome did, I think it makes more sense to keep Andrew Kopp, because you look at what he did during the offseason, he proved to be one of the better acquisitions. And then even in the playoffs, I believe he scored 6 goals for the Rangers. He contributed significantly, and I think ultimately he's a year younger than Strome. I think you have to worry about the long-term future, and I would definitely focus on keeping him. And then Frank Vetrano, this is another one that's going to be tough, because if there was no salary cap, I would be absolutely sure that they're going to be keeping him, but I just don't know if that's a legit possibility. And then we go through the other unrestricted free agents. Justin Braun, the defensive depth piece, was one of the older veterans they got at the deadline. I don't think he's going to be back. I think he's a guy you can easily replace. Then there's Greg McKegg. He's another guy that I think probably leaves. I know he's a good penalty killer, but another guy you can, if you do keep him, you probably keep him on the cheap, but he'll probably spend some time in Hartford. And then Kevin Rooney, another guy who definitely was a solid fourth liner, but I think he's another guy that if you lose him, you could probably find a way to replace him. Or if you keep him, he's another guy that, depending on what they do, he'll probably spend some time in the minor leagues. But now we get to the restricted free agents, and there's a few of them that are really of significance. So Sammy Blais was the player, number 91, who you might not remember. He was acquired for Pavel Buchnevich during the offseason, and a lot of people were shaming this trade. And I kind of was to an extent, but not for the reason that a lot of people were, because I knew Pavel Buchnevich was a guy that you couldn't keep. My issue was I wasn't sure that they got enough for him, and that didn't really have anything. That wasn't me knocking Sammy Blais. I just didn't think they got a significant return, and Sammy Blais was a guy that I thought could have really produced during the season, but unfortunately we'll never really know because he got slew banned in November against the New Jersey Devils, and I'm really iffy on him. I don't think he ends up staying. And then you got Julien Gauthier. I would say sayonara to him. He's a guy who's got speed and has potential, but unfortunately he's a guy that cannot finish. And I think that's the one difference between him and Mendoza from the Mighty Ducks series. He's a guy who's really fast, but unfortunately he can't finish. The only difference is at least Julien Gauthier can stop and doesn't crash on the boards all the time. And now we get to the last two big names. Alexander Georgiev. I feel for Alexander Georgiev because at one point he was looked at as a possible heir to Henrik Lundqvist. I mean, in the later years of Lundqvist's contract, he actually outperformed him. But once Igor came along and once you saw how good he was, there was no way he was going to be a starter long term. And while it was good to have him as a backup, unfortunately, I think being a backup kind of affected him to the point where he just didn't have as good numbers this past season. So I have a feeling he's going to be gone, but he definitely deserves an opportunity to be a starter elsewhere. And then lastly, Capo Caco. This is the one that is pretty much the big elephant in the room when it comes to free agents. I think they absolutely have to be able to find a way to sign him. And I think he pretty much wants to stay too. I think he's definitely going to be back. It's just a matter of how much money. I don't think it's going to be a Hughes-like contract, but I would say maybe like 2 or 3 years, hopefully at the right price, because that's the one tough thing about these off seasons is the salary cap, and it's essentially a necessary evil that Gary Bettman created.
Yeah. I don't think we're going to go with good old Gary Bettman on that one, but
no, Gary Bettman
in the past, yes,
he's not in Manfred territory.
No. I mean, there was a time that he was, but
yes.
He's elevated himself. Yeah, the one area I would say watching the Rangers all season and all postseason that's actually been like a major issue, and it really didn't show itself totally. But I mean, when you watch the games, you can't help but avoid it. They need to bring someone in here who can win a face-off. I mean, It seems like it's incredible. I mean, I just seem to notice it all the time watching it, but it really didn't show itself. But you notice it when you watch when you're a diehard fan. You notice all this stuff. They couldn't win a face-off. I mean, they were. I think in the playoffs, entering the playoffs. They were the worst team of the 16 teams in that in terms of winning face-off percentage, and that's always a key thing because it seems like always these big goals will start with a face-off win or a loss. I mean, we've seen that on the Rangers on the positive side and on the negative side. So that would be an area that I would try and get somebody in here that can win a face-off. Of course, relatively cheap if you can. But otherwise, Hank, I have nothing else to add on to it. I think you nailed everything spot on, and it was amazing when you brought up Georgiev, and I just remember that time when you had Lundqvist, Georgiev, and Igor, and it was like, wow, you got 3 possible starting goaltenders on this team at the same time. That doesn't usually always happen. So I would, though, if you don't bring back Georgiev, which I think is certainly possible, I would like them to get a veteran guy in here because as great as Igor is, you're going to have to give him some breaks. You don't want to overexpose him. And sometimes I think part of the thing was in that Pittsburgh series when he gave up those many goals and he had to get pulled, I think it was because he was just completely overused. I mean, what I mean by overused is, he played so much, that 3 overtime game. It was a little different on Pittsburgh's side because they were playing with a second and third string goaltender. So same thing like Carolina. They were playing with, backups like Ronta, and then, Ronta ended up going out and they had to bring in a third string guy too. So it's a little different in that regard. So I would look at a center who can win a faceoff for you, and I would look at a veteran backup to give Igor some rest, because it's like the same thing towards Lundqvist towards the end of his career. He couldn't do the whole full season. He was almost playing like a second season with all those playoff games he was in. So I would look at that. Otherwise, this team for the most part, I think they're set for a multiple year run here, because you look at the rest of the whole conference and even the Metropolitan Division. I'm Philadelphia's not going to be there. Pittsburgh, was basically putting this together last resort. So, the Devils, really, they're going to take off. The Islanders, I'm not sure where they are. So, I mean, the Rangers have the pieces there to keep this going for a few years now. So if they could just address a couple of other needs and keep it going here, then I think we could look at this spot next year and a few years down the line, and they could keep this going.
Oh, absolutely. And there's more to this offseason that I didn't really address, but I really wanted to focus on the free agents. I think there's probably going to be other guys that could end up being traded or bought out. Whatever Drury does, we'll see what happens. But so far, I've had good reason to be trusting of his judgment. I mean, he pretty much made a lot of good moves, especially after replacing Jeff Gordon, who, let me just give you a friendly neighborhood reminder once again. Don't forget the good moves that Jeff Gordon made these past few years to help get the Rangers in this situation. Yeah. Was he a perfect GM? No, but then again, neither are a lot of guys. So just wanted to take that moment to mention that again. But yeah, no, I agree. I think teams you mentioned, Pittsburgh and Washington, are probably going to be on declines. Those teams aren't really going to getting any younger. And Pittsburgh's had all those playoff years. Who knows what happens to them? And then the Islanders, I think, are probably going to be on a decline. I mean, let's face it. I think they peaked after they made those back-to-back conference finals runs. But now they let go of one of probably the most successful coach they've had since Al Arbor, and they replaced him with one of his assistants who pretty much teaches the same concept. So it seems to me like they're taking a lateral, and then the Devils could be a threat so long as they actually get a goalie and a competent defense. But otherwise, I'm not really scared of them unless they actually take a significant stride. And then I think really the only team left that worries me that's in the division is Carolina. And then you look elsewhere in the Eastern Conference, there's still a number of teams that won 100 games this past season, and all of them really could have given Tampa Bay a threat. But at the end of the day, the Lightning, with all that star power, they're back in the cup run, and we'll see what happens. Sooner or later, though, I have a feeling they're going to end up having a decline. It happens to every team. But for now, though, let's enjoy that team while we can, whether you like them or you hate them, because you don't see great runs like that very often in the NHL.
Yeah, and speaking of the Lightning, so the Stanley Cup Final gets going on Wednesday night against the Colorado Avalanche, and I'm amazed by this because Colorado has easily gotten through the West. They swept Nashville, they got past the Blues, and then their run in the Western Conference Final, which seems like it was so long ago against Edmonton, they got through them real easily, so they make it back. And it was something we had talked about with the Lightning, how they were off for 9 days. This is the second time now that the Avalanche have had an extended break in between series. And I know John Cooper, the head coach of the Lightning, had said that, he feels like his team really needed a break here going into this series. But the one thing I look at right away with this series is the goaltending matchup. And yeah, I know the Avalanche have a lot of star power. Nathan McKinnon, they got a lot of offense, and you've seen that in the games that they played. But I'm looking at Andrei Vasilevskiy here, and he seems to take his game up another notch in the postseason. We saw how great he was in the Rangers series, and even from Game 6 of the Toronto series on, just how great he's been. And the Lightning have been here before, and that's another reason when I look at this series, I'm looking at two things. I'm looking at the goaltending matchup, which I give the advantage to the Lightning, and I look at the experience factor in the spot, and that to me goes to the Lightning. And it's not to take anything away from Colorado, because if you watch their playoff games, they've breezed through the Western Conference like nothing. But this is not the same. This is not anywhere near the kind of level of competition that Colorado has faced getting to this point. So I'm looking at that. And I'm also looking at the possibility that Braden Point, who's been a very valuable player to the Lightning here, might be making a return in this series. So if you factor all that in and you look at Stamkos and you look at Kucherov, who I think has a possibility to win the MVP in this final, I'm breaking all that down. And Hank, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go out on the limb here. And I haven't been great with predictions in all. I was pretty good with, unfortunately, I got the Lightning prediction right. I got them in 6. I'm going to go out here on a limb. And I'm going to tell you the Lightning are going to win their 3rd straight Stanley Cup Final here, and I'm taking them in 5. I really think that all this experience and all the factors in here they're going to have a three-peat, which we have not seen in sports in 20 years. And I'm going to take them in 5 here over the Avalanche just for all those reasons.
Yeah, no, I think this is going to be a classic series, and I'm actually going to go the different route as you. I'm going to throw a curveball. I think as talented as the Lightning are, great core, great goalie, part of me, I think everyone's picking the Lightning because of how they've won in years past, but I don't think we're really talking enough about how powerful the Colorado Avalanche are. I mean, besides Nathan McKinnon, you've got Landeskog, you've got Cale Makar, you got Nazem Kadri, who ended up getting injured at the end of the Western Conference Finals, but he's been another solid player for them. He had a hat trick against the St. Louis Blues, and I don't want to get into the situation that motivated him to get that hat trick, but they're a team that has been built for a while, and they've been knocking on the door. I think their time might finally come. However, I think it's going to take them 7 games because you're not beating Vasilevsky that easily.
Yeah, the other thing too is Kemper, their regular goalie, he missed the final 3 games of the conference final, and Francois, what's that name? Pavel Francois.
Francouz. I don't know how you pronounce it.
But he started games 2, 3, and 4, and he won them, and they're still looking at who they're going to go with. He's 6-0 with a 2.86 goals against average. Kemper 6-2, 2.65. So the goals against average is kind of up there. And so I think the goalie matchup actually is going to be kind of significant in this. And that's why I think the Lightning are, to me, have the advantage as well as the experience. But it could go long. And then I also really wonder, too, the rest factor. And I know it panned out well for Colorado because they had a long time off earlier in the postseason. I wonder how it's really going to be, because if you looked at the Lightning against the Rangers, it looked like they were kind of rusty in the beginning before they really found their stride. So I think that could be a factor. And again, I think the Lightning have been through this before. And if you get possibly Braden Point back, who's been a very valuable player to them, I think that only helps them. I really do. So would it surprise me if the Avalanche win? No. But I think if the Lightning win, they're going to win it short. I think if the Avalanche are going to win it, it's going to be a long series. So this would be a situation almost like when I said with the Rangers and the Rangers and the Hurricanes. The longer the series, the advantage was to the Rangers. The longer this series, I think the advantage to Colorado. But I'm going to take the Lightning in 5.
Lightning in 5. Wow, that's a bold statement. But again, it's not like I'd be surprised if the Lightning found a way to win this series at all, considering what they've done in years past. But I just kind of feel like I need to go a different way just because of how powerful the Avalanche are. And look, I'm going to be honest too. I also thought this was going to be the year the Avalanche were finally going to get it done before the season. So it would only be right if I stuck with the original prediction. And since they're in the finals, I'm going to ride with them. And I'm going to be honest, if there's one silver lining with the Rangers being eliminated, it's not having to deal with guys like Makar and McKinnon, because they clobbered us during the regular season.
Yeah.
Then again, those games were before the deadline, so who knows? Maybe it would have been different.
Yeah, but you know what? Stanley Cup, the finals are always great. But I think there's also an incentive to watch it this year because we're looking at real history. In terms of, three-peats, the last team to do it in hockey was the Islanders in the 80s. And obviously we know that because that's all Islander fans keep telling us is about the 80s. And I'm like, guys, got to check the calendar. Got to check the watch in the calendar here. It's 2022. It's been 40 years now. So it hasn't happened in hockey in 40. It hasn't happened in basketball, and it hasn't happened in sports, really. The last time that in sports that we had a three-peat in professional sport was the 2002 Lakers, and then obviously we know the Yankees from 98 to 2000 won 3 in a row. And it's so tough to do. Yeah, that's absolute. Oh, that's the 2001.
Yep.
Awesome. Oh, that's great. And look, we are right now, I know it's only the middle of June, but we're on a collision course to possibly have that again. But if you look at, I think a big reason, though, why you see the Lightning having the chance to do this also is the core group of players that they have. And that's part of the reason why you don't really see teams repeat anymore, is because of free agency and how it's tough for players to, stay with their home teams, and also the level of competition, because it just gets to be difficult. I think a team that in sports that we actually thought had a chance to win multiple championships in a row in sports was probably the Kansas City Chiefs. And with that run that they've had, they've only won one Super Bowl in 4 years. So, and now they're they're possibly the toughest division in football. So it's tough to see that's another reason why I'm rooting for the Lightning. I mean, I'm happy if Colorado wins too. I mean, obviously the last time the Avalanche won the Stanley Cup was in 2001 with Raymond Bourque, one of the most famous moments in sports, when he lifted the cup after 21 years in the league. So that would be cool. But I just think the Lightning, everything that's been going on here, I think they're going to pull this out. But we'll see. It'll be a fun final. It starts on Wednesday, and we will see what transpires here.
Yeah, definitely. And I love that you brought up the Raymond Bourque moment. 21 years in the league, and he finally gets to win in his last game, and then they give him the cup. That was such a great moment.
Yeah, Joe Sakic hands off. I just hear Gary Thorne's voice to that also. That call, just it really was legendary. I mean, just the history behind all that was so incredible. We'll find out what happens here in the Stanley Cup as the NHL season comes to a close. Also, a sport coming to a close this season is the NBA. They are right now 5 games through in the NBA Finals, and this has been a wild series. The Warriors won Game 5 on Monday night to take a 3-2 series lead. And, Hank, this has just been crazy because it's been a game where you look at the star players and, you've had some players that have had off nights and others contribute. And, just starting with Game 5 on Monday, here's Stephen Curry, who does not make a single three-pointer. And who is it that steps up and provides a big game for you? Andrew Wiggins. The former number 1 overall pick, who Minnesota cannot wait to get rid of, goes to the Warriors. And I'm not saying he's turning out to be like the number 1 overall pick, but boy, he's playing like and not only saying like an MVP, but a very valuable player for this Warriors team. And just think, if you are the Celtics, sitting here getting ready for Game 6, and you look back and you hold Stephen Curry without a 3 and you don't win the game, it's like, what do you got to do to win? Well, number 1, stop turning the ball over. That would be something too. That would be something to look at as well. But I tell you, I look at this, and I'm
had a big lead in Game 4 too, and they blew that one. So
yeah, it's just, I think that the firepower now, this the finals to me always comes down to stars, but at the same time, it also comes down to your role players. And we've spoken about this on the show before, the Andrew Wiggins of the world, the Jordan Pooles for Golden State, what they've been able to do. This is part of the reason why I picked the Warriors to win this series, was because of those players. And say, if you have an off night from Curry, or an off night from Klay Thompson, who had a great night, or Draymond Green, who doesn't necessarily put up the numbers, but the defense is there, and even he did put up some numbers in Game 5. If one of those 3 guys doesn't have a big night, who else do you have? You've got Poole, you've got Wiggins. Those guys step up. On the Celtics side, if Tatum has an off quarter like he did in the fourth quarter, if he doesn't have, who else do you have? Jaylen Brown's been inconsistent. Marcus Smart. Robert Williams, I think part of the problem is his injuries just been hampering him. So that's a big reason why I do like the Warriors. But I will tell you this before I get your thoughts about this series. It would still not surprise me in the least bit the Celtics win Game 6 on Thursday, and we're talking about a 7th game back in Golden State on Sunday. Because it's just been that kind of series. When you think his team is down and out, the other squad comes back and wins. And that could certainly be the case here. But at the same time, if you're on the Warriors side, you look at Steph Curry, who had an off night, and he's not going to have 2 off nights in a row. And you're able to win despite that. Warriors could win it in 6 as well. I could see Curry going off for a huge game like he did in Game 4, and putting this game and series away on Thursday night.
Yeah, it's been an incredible finals to watch, and I think another guy that's been key for the Celtics is Jaylen Brown. He's another guy that when he does well, that's when they're firing. But when he goes bad, then that could be a problem. And yeah, I think you pretty much nailed everything on the head. The Warriors, whenever Steph Curry has a bad shooting game, you can get good performances from guys such as the Klay Thompsons, the Jordan Pooles. You still have Draymond Green, who's pretty much who you could probably make the case is the heart and soul, and some would even suggest that is the case. And not to mention, you'll also get other good performances from guys like Gary Payton II, and yeah, I think, and obviously not to mention Andrew Wiggins. And it's funny, I'm now seeing talks that Andrew Wiggins is like going to possibly steal that MVP trophy out of Steph Curry, but I don't really agree with that take because first of all, even with his cold shooting performance, Steph Curry still contributed with a lot of assists in the game. That's one of those things that no one's really talking about because we're so used to him hitting a three-pointer or something like that. But you can obviously blame the Celtics all you want for not taking advantage of him going cold. But at the same time, I think the fact that the Warriors finding a way to bounce back after blowing a 16-point lead early and then like just breaking away in the fourth quarter, I think that speaks volumes to one, the championship pedigree, and two, the fact that they're just so deep. And we've got another fun fact for you. Steph Curry has never won an NBA Finals MVP. Do we think this is going to be the first time that's going to happen? I'll tell you my answer: a resounding yes.
If they win, of course, because
I
think that was a topic that was being discussed before the series started. How Curry never won an MVP, but I mean he contributes in so many ways, and his teams are just so darn good that he doesn't necessarily have to be the guy. I that's another reason why I love the Warriors because the Celtics. It's like Tatum's got to be the guy. And you know what? He had an all fourth quarter, and if he's not there, who else is going to be there to pick up the slack? There really isn't anybody else there. Curry's got Klay Thompson, who looks like he's finally rebounded off those 2 major injuries. Draymond Green, who doesn't put up the numbers, but his presence there and his defense, we've seen it even in this postseason. It's there. It's Jordan Poole, it's Wiggins, like you said. All these guys. Poole hits another long monster shot in the game. So, yeah, Curry's never won an MVP. I mean, it'd be awesome if the Warriors could win this again, and he wins it. I think he will if that's the case, if the Warriors do close this out. But, yeah, that was a topic for discussion here. But I want to talk about the Celtics here for just a moment because there is something, when you look – I watched the game before we did the show here, and one of the things that came to my mind also was the workload of Boston's players. Just for instance, a Jaylen Brown, who I know who you brought up. Brown had a lot of mistakes. I mean, he shot poorly. He had 5 turnovers. He missed 3 free throws. He had a minus 19 in Game 5. But when you look at Jaylen Brown and you look at Jason Tatum, they both played over 44 minutes in Game 5. So you wonder the workload. It for the most part, they've been playing with a short rotation here because they had 5 guys who played under 2 minutes, but you have Tatum and Brown who both played 44 minutes. Marcus Smart played just under 40. Al Horford played just under 33, and all those guys were minuses on the night. So what they don't really have a whole lot of depth. Where you look at the Warriors and Wiggins played 42 minutes. Klay played just under 40. Curry played 37. But, they could spread around the minutes a little bit more. Like an Otto Porter could play 15. Kevin Looney, 16. Gary Payton, 26. Jordan Poole only needs to play about 15 to be effective. So is the workload a factor here for Golden State? How, they've had guys in and out of the lineup, whether it's been COVID protocol throughout the postseason or, Robert Williams, who seems to always be questionable to play. and you haven't really seen them go with a very deep rotation in the playoffs. And obviously, when you're in the finals, you want to play your main guys as long as possible. But sometimes the workload, and maybe that is starting to be the a factor here.
Yeah, definitely. And again, workload is definitely a good factor too. But again, I think the other thing is ultimately the Celtics don't quite have the championship pedigree like Golden State does.
Well, now we find out going back to Game 6 in Boston on Thursday, and I sit here right now and I tell you, Hank, as much as it looks like the Celtics are done, I don't think this series is going to end Thursday. I think you're going to. No, you know what? The Celtics, they've done this before. They've been in elimination games. They're 3-0 in them.
True.
They go to. They don't lose at home. Neither do the. And I know
I beg to differ. They lost Game 6 at home last round.
Well, I was going to say that, but they don't. They don't lose elimination games. So
True.
when it looks like they're down and out, they find a way. I still would not be surprised if we're looking at a 7-game series, but I think either 6 or 7. That being said, the Warriors to me still got it done here. I just don't know what Boston's going to need to do a lot. They're going to have to limit the turnovers. It seems like all their games that they're losing, they're just turning the ball over. They're playing very, very sloppy. But they've been down and out before, and they've come back to at least continue it going. But to me, there's just too much firepower also on Golden State's hands, and I think the fatigue factor is really starting to set in for the Celtics.
Yeah, no, I wouldn't be surprised if the Celtics found a way to win Game 7, but ultimately, I know another team that was 5-0 going into elimination games, and unfortunately that didn't happen. And
yeah,
sorry, I can't believe I'm bringing that up, but
it's okay.
But yeah, what I'm saying is that 3-0 in elimination games, that means like you can't lose an once you lose an elimination game, that means you're done. So take that for what you will.
I just think when you look at it, like I said, and this in Game 5 showed it. If Steph Curry has an off shooting night, they can still win. If Jaylen Brown has an off night like he did in Game 5, the Celtics can't win. That's really what it comes down to. And the depth piece for the Warriors is another reason why I love them. And I think they're going to pull this out either in Game 6 or in Game 7. And we'll find out. And when we're here for episode 15, I'm sure we will have a champion, and we will look back and then start looking ahead to the NBA draft, because before you know it'll be here. And I know there's one quick nugget. The Celtics are 5-4, by the way, at home. I was saying more so in the elimination games. That's what I was trying to say. But yeah, they're 5-4 at home in the playoffs, but 3-0 in elimination games, and they're going to have to go at least 4-0 to keep it going here. But I think when we're sitting here next week and we look back at the season and look ahead to the NBA draft, I think we're going to have the Warriors as champions once again. There's one quick nugget in the NBA I want to bring up before we move on here, Hank, and that was about Zion Williamson. So there's been a lot of discussion with Zion about, his situation with the Pelicans. He missed the entire season with a foot issue, and now he's talking about how he really wants to be there. And I think part of that is when you look at the Pelicans as a team, they started out so poorly this year, but they seemed to turn it around when they got CJ McCollum in, and the Pelicans could be a team that can at least be a playoff contending team if they have Zion back and healthy. And maybe he sees all that and that rally and stuff, and he wants to come back and play. Now, he's somebody that if he wants to move on, as a Knicks fan, I take a shot at him, absolutely. But I thought that I just had to bring that up. Zion not playing, and maybe now wanting to change a change of heart and wants to stay there in New Orleans. And if he ever becomes what he was supposed to be, then that Pelicans team could take a next step as well.
Yeah, for sure.
I take him on the Knicks, though. Just saying.
Yeah.
Draft is coming up here, a week and a half away. That's one thing. When the NBA Finals ends, you go right into the draft, and you get the summer league, and then you get a little bit of a break from the NBA before it then starts back up again. I'm just excited because I'm very curious to see what my Knicks do, not only in the draft but in free agency, and if these young guys can really produce and keep it going.
Hopefully, they can get a point guard for once.
Well, the guy that I want, and I know it's a long shot, but I really want Jalen Brunson from Dallas. That's the guy to me that really is like, that'd be a great fit. And
Yes.
I mean, if you get him and then Derrick Rose can be your bench veteran presence, I mean, that's a great sign.
That's
I mean, that's
ideal.
a long shot. I mean, I know Brunson's going to want a lot of money. I know some of the Knicks were actually down in Dallas when they were in the playoffs. Maybe not scouting, but just watching. But that's the guy. I know it's a long shot, but I think that's the guy. You need a point guard in here to at least get it moving in the right direction here. But we'll find out as the draft is a little over a week and a half away. But Hank, just to finish up here, there's a big deal going on here in the world of golf, and who knew we would ever spend so much time talking golf on the show? But I know we would get everything in. You know, we would even spend a couple seconds on the Belmont Stakes, which is usually the one day per year that my hometown gets put on the map. Although maybe now it's at least 41 other times because there's another team that plays in Elmont. But
more like 2 because a certain blue team's fan base invades it. But yeah.
Yeah, it's right across the street. I know I brought that up on last Saturday morning. But as far as the golf here, so this new LIV Golf Tour, which has been talked about before it actually started this past week, the number of PGA Tour players that were going over to play this, and I feel like we need to get some like your wrestling guys on the show because this to me almost feels like, you know, the WWE going to like WCW or ECW and just like, you know, leaving and going here, but without the controversy, because this whole Live Golf tour, whatever you want to call it, has been mired in controversy from the second it was announced. And obviously, you know why, because it's a Saudi-backed funded league. And we know, obviously, the whole reason behind that. But, you know, it all started with Phil Mickelson going over there. And then just name after name that if you were a PGA Tour golf fan, you know these guys going over there. Are they the top of the top? No. But are they very good players going over there? Yes. I mean, they're names that you would know. I mean, we're talking – I mean, I'll pull up some of the list here right now just to show you who it is. So we obviously know about Phil Mickelson, who's won 6 majors, but Dustin Johnson, Martin Kramer, Graham McDowell, Louis Oosthuizen, Sergio Garcia, and Kevin Na, Lee Westwood. I mean, there were 19 players that were on the PGA Tour that went over there. And, again, not the top players in the world. I mean, Phil Mickelson, if you watched him, is nowhere near what he used to be. And, Hank, it's just crazy. So the PGA announced that all the players that were going over there are going to be suspended for taking part in this invitational tournament. Now, the crazy thing about that is you've got a major at the PGA happening this weekend, the U.S. Open up in Boston, and you cannot suspend players for a major. So so you've got the guys like Phil Mickelson coming back and playing this weekend, and you know it's tough to like. There's so many like different factors into all this. I know you're not the biggest golf fan in the world, but when this transpired, what were your initial thoughts, or still thinking right now? What are you thinking about all this?
I still think that I just think it's all really crazy. Like all of this, like for like another country, like being involved in like the product, that's definitely nuts. But the fact that they're getting suspended for another thing, but not the U.S. Open, that definitely feels pretty strange to me. I don't know about you.
Well, see, I understand the reasoning behind it. But this whole Live Golf thing, the majors are not sanctioned by the PGA, so that's why it can't be. So, like the Masters, PGA Championship, the only like big tournament, well, it's not necessarily a major, but it's like the unofficial 5th major is the PGA Championship. That's the one that not necessarily a major, but it's like that 5th major. But just as far as this whole Live Golf thing, the whole Saudi angle to all this is what really like bothers me with all this, because we obviously know the history behind it all. And unfortunately, it seems like, you know what, money always talks. And that's really it. When you see the amount of money, and this company's got billions of dollars. I think I had read it was something like 850 billion. So the fact that they don't even have a TV deal yet, and the fact that, you know, they could give guys hundreds of millions of dollars to play in this golf event, and they don't even need to be that good, and they're going over there for the money and stuff. look, you want to always make more money, of course. I mean, that's anybody in life. But at the same time, you have to look at the history to all this. And it's just, the optics are just terrible. That's really what it is. It just looks terrible. It's that's really what it is. And I just don't think this works because this has been talked about. This has been discussed in a while. I remember reading this a couple of days ago that there was a story back in 2020 about a global rival to the PGA being a long-standing idea, but something like this, when you are when you're taking money from a Saudi Arabia, it just doesn't look good. That's really what it is. And somebody like Phil Mickelson, who we know has had gambling problems before, to take the millions of dollars, and listen to some of these numbers as our buddy Nick Morganson is helping us out here. Dustin Johnson reportedly $150 million. Phil Mickelson $200 million. They offered Tiger Woods $750 million to go play, and Tiger said no. Rory McIlroy said no. There's been some great pieces from other writers about how bad this is. It's just like what they're based what it is the players that go over and play this LIV golf thing just don't seem to care about the whole optics about Saudi Arabia being behind all this. It's like the blood money thing. It's just they don't seem to care about that. They just care about the money. So, you could have Phil out there talking he cares. But if you watch Phil's press conference the other day, I mean, it looked like that was all scripted. And I just can't get behind this. And also, if you're going to have this sort of thing, how do you not have a TV deal? And if you're a TV, and I understand the money angle, that's what's going to be talked about. But if you are a TV company, why would you take something as controversial as this LIV Golf?
Yeah.
They're more focused on streaming. Well, yeah. It's starting to look like Major League Baseball is also seeming to be more focused on streaming too. And I understand that maybe what the future is like, but right now it's not. I'm not going out of my way to watch that. I'm not. Yeah. That's what I would say. And the thing is too. So let's one quick thing about this also. Is this good for the sport of golf? It's not. They're talking. You want to talk about competition? That's one thing, but this LIV Golf thing, which you don't even get the best of the best playing there. Phil Mickelson is not what he used to be. I mean, you watch him go out there and play, he's struggling, and just all of his controversial comments, which we've been documented before on Empty the Bench, we've talked about before. I don't see any way that I can get behind something like this. I'll go watch the U.S. Open. The PGA Tour is it perfect? No, but I guess the other thing too is, should they suspend all the players taking part indefinitely because of this? I don't know. I think there's going to be more to this because there's going to be more players that are going to go to this. That's the thing too. If you see all this money and money does, unfortunately in this situation, money is talking, and it should not just be that. But you're going to see more players going over this because this company has billions of dollars and they don't care. They don't even need a TV deal. They'll just go sit on streaming. They'll throw all this away. But this is not good for golf. This whole thing is not good for golf. And I hate to say it's only going to get worse.
Yeah, sounds like
you got the PGA commissioner on CBS. I'm sorry, Hank, go ahead.
I said, yeah, it sounds like they pretty much opened up a big can of worms.
Yeah, the commissioner of the PGA, Jay Monahan, was on CBS over the weekend, and he said that guys shouldn't be allowed to compete in both competitions. Now, you've seen, though, maybe because they don't play at the same time, you've seen guys go play 2 different tours. I mean, that has happened. But I think Jay's kind of also worried about the fact that, he's going to lose other players to it. But I'll tell you, though, I mean, if you research this whole history behind LIV Golf, it's not great. And I don't think it's not going to be a success. Because if you look behind the history of it and where the money's coming from, It's just bad. I mean, the fact that the series being funded by the Saudi Arabian government is just like, we know about all that. Now the thing is, this LIV golf stuff is going to probably grow. There's going to be more people that are going to go over there, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's going to be better. Yeah, Greg Norman being the CEO. I mean, it's like, yeah, Greg Norman. Okay. I don't care if Tiger Woods is the CEO. I mean, I'm staying far away from this, and this whole stuff. I mean, this is really only the beginning of it, Hank. It's going to keep going. So we'll find out. This is something to keep. This is just like the appetizer. Just keep an eye on this, because I'm sure in the coming weeks there's going to be more to this. So we'll find out what happens there. I'll run a couple of quick nuggets here, Hank, before we go. Obviously, Belmont Stakes. I talked about that. I always like the Belmont Stakes, even if there's no Triple Crown winner. We know Rich Strike, who won the Kentucky Derby, was not going to run in the Preakness, which we understood because he's an 80-1 long shot to have won the Derby. Only knew he was going to run a day before. But the Belmont to me is always special. I grew up 5 minutes away from the track. I lived on Long Island for 25 years, so it's always the one day a year that my hometown gets put on the map. So it's always something special. And the one thing also I watched with the race, you noticed near full attendance for the first time in 3 years. So it felt like it was normal. So that was pretty cool. And so, I always like the Belmont because I grew up 5 minutes from it. So that's always something special. So we had the Belmont Stakes this past week. So the Triple Crown is over. Obviously, there was no chance for Triple Crown because Rich Strike was not going to run in the Preakness. But Mo Donegal won the 154th running of the Belmont. So it was a pretty cool event there. A couple other things real quick. The baseball front, the Mets and the Yankees continue to do unbelievably well. They are the first teams to 40 wins in baseball. July and August, the Subway Series, it's going to be a lot of fun. I will say, though, one other thing real quick with baseball. And again, this speaks to part of the problem that baseball is dealing with. This College World Series that's happening right now is so much more enjoyable than baseball. Did you see that my Notre Dame Fighting Irish upset the best team in the country in Tennessee over the weekend? And they are on their way to Omaha for the World Series. Amazing stuff. Go Irish as we get closer to college football season. But I'll tell you, you want to watch good baseball? Go watch the College World Series. As I watch baseballs, I watch guys dropping like flies. I'm watching guys, pitchers get hurt every other day, it seems like. I'm watching star second baseman for the Braves and Ozzie Albies break his foot on a swing. Yeah. And you see these college guys working their butts off pretty much for nothing. Yeah. That's it. It's good old Rob Manfred. This product as we continue. Oh, by the way, the Mets and the Yankees both had another Amazon and Apple TV game in the past week.
Good Lord.
I wasn't going to bring it up, but now you got me going. I'm going to bring it up.
Oh, good Lord. I hate the whole streaming thing. I know it's all about money and whatnot, but I've said enough about that whole.
But isn't though your number one job in sports also to grow the game too?
Isn't that one thing that Rob Manfred has failed to do a lot over his time as commissioner?
I mean, say what you want about all the other commissioners. Basketball's grown. Hockey's grown. Football, obviously, we know football right now is America's sport. It's not baseball. It's football.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we could sit here every week and talk about football. I mean, we're still obviously right now we're still waiting on the whole Deshaun Watson thing, and there are supposedly going to be 2 more lawsuits that are going to be added on. So that would be 26 now. As far as other football news, real quick, the only other big thing that really happened was that in terms of the Raiders, you had Hunter Renfrow. By the way, Zocchesty High School right down here in South Carolina. He signed a 2-year extension. So, football's getting close. We are, less than 2 months away now from the first preseason game, and less than 3 months away from the start of the regular season. So, Hank, before you know it, it's going to be here.
Yeah, no, it's crazy. Time really flies. Summer, it's funny. Summer, there are moments where it seems long, but once it ends and you get to fall, it's like, let's get back at it with the playoffs, and then of course the return.
Absolutely. And you know how it also goes by real quick? Because we just wrapped up episode number 14 of Game On. That's 14 shows in the books. Yep, next week will be number 15 as we get closer to, and we're working on more specials along the way. You know, we'll do an NBA draft recap. Before you know, we'll be talking about the trade deadline. I mean, it's gonna come. It's gonna come real fast. So that's why you got to enjoy every day. But Hank, thanks again. That was a lot of fun. Even though we had to do a little bit of reminiscing about the Rangers, it still was a lot of fun, as always. So thank you again, as always, folks. Of course, we are presented by Knack. Go on to our link that we have on the bottom of your screen there. You can check out the new Knack Sling Bag, and I'll tell you that's going to be a very cool thing when we get ours. You can order that Knack Sling Bag by clicking the link in the description on the bottom of your screen there. You get free shipping. So make sure to subscribe also to the Empty the Bench podcast network on YouTube, so you can also get that notification of when we are going to have our next show. And of course, our next show will be on next Tuesday and every Tuesday at 3 p.m. Eastern. So for Hank Indictor, I am Johnny Montalbano. This has been Game On, presented by Knack here on the Empty the Bench podcast network, and we will talk to you again next week.